Welcome to the Self Storage University podcast, where you will learn the correct way to identify, evaluate, negotiate, perform due diligence on, renegotiate, finance, turn around, and operate self-storage facilities. And now, here is your host, a partner in one of the largest real estate portfolios in the U.S. with nearly $1 billion of holdings, Frank Rolfe.
Contrary to what the Biden administration may be telling you, high inflation, rates of 8 to 10%, are not just a blip in the long-term schedule of inflation rates, but more of a permanent fixture right now. In fact, we've pretty much fallen back to the Jimmy Carter era of the 1970s, where rates hit as high as over 10%. And you've got to adjust your purchases and your management according to that new higher inflation. This is Frank Rolfe, the Self Storage University podcast. We're going to talk about the impact of high inflation. Now, don't forget that not that long ago, back during the Trump presidency, inflation was not even a non-issue. You never even heard the word. We were producing lots of products, lots of energy, and everything was just seemingly good. And I don't know if you can blame the whole thing on the Biden administration, but clearly something has now derailed. And out of nowhere, we are facing inflation rates that we have literally not seen as a country for almost half a century. As a result, most people are unfamiliar with the techniques and the issues caused by high inflation because most self-storage buyers weren't adults during that period. I, however, was. I was around. I was in business back in the eras of Carter and Reagan, of the battle of high inflation and then trying to break the back of high inflation and to cure it. So I'm fairly familiar with it. And I want to give you some ideas of the impact of high levels of inflation, both the good and the bad. Let's start off with the good impact of high inflation. Well, it erodes your bank loan in real dollars. This is one of the best benefits, and this is why real estate and gold and silver have all done well in inflationary times, because inflation makes the value of the underlying core hard asset go up, and that makes it inflate in relation to the loan. So if we just continue to raise rents and manage the business and the values all go up correspondingly, then that makes the loan seem very small. You probably know this if you talk to anyone who ever bought a house or a property in Los Angeles, let's say in the 1980s or the 1990s, and they bought that duplex for $500,000, and today it's worth $2 million. But when they bought it for $500,000, they had a $400,000 mortgage, which seemed like a lot back then. But now it's worth $2 million, has a $400,000 mortgage. It looks like a joke. What happened there? That's the power of inflation on the good side. Another good thing about inflation, high rates of inflation regarding the storage industry is it's going to make mortgages very, very expensive. And because mortgages will be very expensive, people will be less likely to move when they need more space. So how do they carve out of their home another bedroom without moving? Well, they're going to have to put stuff in storage to make way. All the storage in the house is basically going to go the way of the buffalo and end up in a self-storage because they got to tap into every square foot they have to add on their own new space needs. Also, those high levels of inflation are going to make new homes incredibly expensive to build. You're already seeing that now, lumber prices doubling and all these different trades and costs and products, very, very expensive. And when that happens, again, it puts a premium on what you put on that very expensive square foot of space in the house. So once again, you're not going to be storing a Christmas tree on a square feet that might cost you $200, $300, $400 a square foot to build. So instead, you're going to go throw that in the self-storage place and pay a fraction of that. But there are some bad sides to inflation as well. Number one, what it does is it's going to erode your profitability. Because as your costs as a storage owner go up on such things as electricity and taxes and insurance and management, that's all coming out of something. It's coming right out of your profits. So when you have high levels of inflation, you're going to see your cost of operation go up right in line with Americans and all the other things that are inflating. Also, very punishingly, when interest rates go up, which they will because the inflation is high and interest rates follow inflation, it's going to raise cap rates. And that's going to make values go down. So what will happen is a natural byproduct of inflation is higher interest rates, higher cap rates, and that makes all real estate go down in value until you can claw your way back up by raising revenues. Also, it's going to make borrowing more costly and dangerous. In times of high inflation and higher interest rates, well, that makes your borrowing to buy a self-storage also more expensive. And you can also get stuck. If you borrowed the money originally at 5% and the new interest rate is 8%, well, ouch. That's a big deal. Can you even afford that? And how can you mitigate that? Can you get a fixed interest rate for a long period of time? The bottom line to all of it is, if you're going to be buying self-storage at this moment, at this time of high inflation, and we're only at the start of it, you didn't see inflation as a headline until just recently. It's all been about COVID the last 2 years. Now suddenly we moved from COVID into inflation, probably being the number one headline in the United States. You can't help but remember it because every time you go to the gas pump, you're seeing prices that no one's ever seen before, ever in American history. So how do you protect yourself? Well, first thing is only buy properties with upside and only buy properties at reasonable cap rates. If you run around buying self-storage facilities at a 4% cap rate with no upside, all you're going to lead to is your own imminent doom. You've got to buy things at reasonable cap rates, a reasonable spread above interest rates, but then also that you can take to the next level. Things that have vacancy to them or the ability to push rents, maybe the ability to cut costs. If you buy a park that has no upside in it, it's like buying a bond. And we all know how bonds do in times of high interest rates and inflation. They do just awful. Also, it's very, very important in your selection of where to buy storage that you're in areas where you actually do have the ability to push rents. Those are not going to be in urban centers. People are leaving urban centers. The stats are very clear. People want out of the city. They want to move into suburbs and exurbs where life is better, quality of life is higher. And as they make that natural shift as a population, it gives you the ability to actually push rents and to push occupancy as opposed to defensively having to cut rents and lose occupancies in those urban centers. So when you're looking at buying, you might want to focus on properties that are in suburban and exurban markets because that's where you'll need to be if you really want to battle inflation. Bear in mind that when you are in a period of 8 to 10% inflation, to maintain where you are, you would have to, for example, in only 5 years, increase your revenues by 50% to stay steady with that. You are not, underline, not ever going to pull that off in an urban market. Not going to happen. You're going to be losing revenue and occupancy more than you will be gaining. So be very, very careful in your selection. The bottom line to it is that when you have high inflation and the resulting higher interest rates, there's good attributes, there's bad attributes, but the most important thing is to plan accordingly. If you understand the dangers, if you understand the benefits, and you buy only properties that do well under that framework, then and only then can you profit in your self-storage investing. This is Frank Rolfe, the Self-Storage University podcast. Hope you enjoyed this. Talk to you again soon.
Thank you for listening to the Self-Storage University podcast. Be sure to visit us at ssupodcast.com, where you can learn the correct way to identify, evaluate, negotiate, perform due diligence on, renegotiate, finance, turnaround, and operate self-storage facilities.